Hi, this is Melissa Manchester, and you lucky people, are listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Robertson with a reminder that we will play our conversation about the life and career of Jeffrey Hunter beginning in our second hour. Be able to stay tuned for that. In the meantime, on the line with us right now is Peter Ford. Peter Ford, son of Glenn Ford and Eleanor Powell, and the author of Glenn Ford a Life. Glenn Ford a Life, an intimate look at the life and times of one of our finest screen actors. Glenn Ford a Life, available wherever books are sold through University of Wisconsin Press, as well as Amazon.com. You can follow Peter Ford, peterford.com. You didn't pursue law school, but you did work in law enforcement for a couple of decades later on in your career, which is interesting because when you worked on Cade's County with your dad, you played a deputy, and then you ended up becoming a deputy in real life.
Absolutely. Yes, we did that. It was a CBS show, and unfortunately it only lasted one season. And I was the forensic deputy, the one in the lab. I used to have most of my scenes with Edgar Buchanan,
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful Edgar, he and Dad worked together in like 13 or 14 different films. But Edward was usually with me in the scene, but yes, I because I was dealing with all kinds of lab stuff. They had a technical advisor there from the LA County Sheriff's Department, and after the season, the show folded, it closed for reasons which are kind of interesting, but and they invited me to join the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department as a reserve deputy, and I ended up doing that, and I served for 22 years and retired as an admin lieutenant for the LA County Sheriff's Department. So I'm very proud. I have my retirement badge, and I keep hoping that I'll get pulled over for some kind of violation. I can, use my badge to get out of trouble. But it never seems to happen. But when I was younger, I was always in trouble, speeding or doing something stupid. So, but anyway, it's been fun.
Well, you have it if you need it, and that's what matters most.
That's true.
That's right. Glenn Ford a Life, available wherever books are sold, Amazon.com, BarnesNoble.com, where books are sold online. Peter Ford is the author of Glenn Ford a Life. Peter Ford's on the line with us. Now, I'm trying to remember. I don't think Cade's County was caught up in the rural purge, which was one of the factors behind CBS's program decision in the early 70s. But I remember it did pretty well because it had a good time slot. It was a Sunday night time slot, which is the most watched night and of the week. And as if I remember correctly, your father would have been open to doing a second season.
Well, yes, that he was, and it did well. And the reason it was canceled, from what I understand, was that they deemed I'll tell you who they was deemed too violent. I can't imagine today that would not happen. I mean, today it would be pretty benign. But in those days, and I think it was, I'm going to guess now, and forgive me, folks out there, but there was a senator, I think his name was Pastore.
Yes. Okay. All right. I remember now. Yes, and there was a lot of noise and there was a lot of controversy. Quinn Martin, who you worked, I don't remember if you ever met Quinn, but you did a couple of Quinn shows around that time, and he got caught up in that too.
Yeah.
And
they canceled it, and I just was so sad because I had a nice part. I think there was 26 episodes in the first year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's quite a few. I think today they do 10 and see if it's going to fly, and then do more. But we did 26. I think it was in 22 of them, and I thought it was great. Though I worked with I had a small part in it, but I was in the cast. But I remember working with. They used to bring in all these wonderful directors, and I remember one day Bobby Darin came in to do a show, and speaking of youthful singers, I remember Bobby Sherman did one,
mm-hmm.
And I have a link with him too that is kind of rounded about. But I don't know if we have enough time to get into
this is the Peter Ford show.
Yeah. Well, do you remember Bobby Sherman?
I know. Here come the brides, and then he had a nice little recording thing in the 70s as well.
I'm engaged to be married to my wife, my dear wife. We've been married now almost 55 years. So I'm not going anywhere. But I went on the dating game. I'm engaged to Linda, my wife, my dear wife, and so I go on the dating game, and Linda said, "Why are you going on?" They asked me to go on the dating.
Yes.
game. Well, they're going to pay me scale, which I think at the time was like I don't know, $100. And to me, $100 then was like $1 million, and plus they were going to give me a tuxedo, a free tuxedo as well. So I thought, well. So I went on the dating game, and here's Bobby Sherman and me, and we weren't the pickers. We were being picked. They had this gal on there. Her name was Peggy Klinger. There used to be a group called the Klinger Sisters. I don't know if anybody would remember them. You probably could Google them and look them up. But Peggy Klinger was the picker, and it was me and a guy named Rod Lauren, who had a pretty good career at RCA Victor Singer at the time, and Bobby Sherman and me. And so they said to, now of course now my wife's at home, Linda, she's not my wife, we're engaged. And they said to the gal, Peggy Klinger, said, "Okay, sing me a song." And so they came to me, and I sang a few bars of Try a Little Tenderness. She may be weary when you get weary. Well, anyways, a long story, she picks me. And so they zoom in on my face, and you could see me say, because I saw it on a telescope later, I said, "Oh no," because I knew, Linda's my fiance at home's not going to be too happy, and
yes.
He picked me. And anyway, in those days, Ed, whoever gets picked, you could either if they decided not to go, then the other person could pick someone to go with. So I kept thinking that Peggy, she's not going to go. I'm going to go. They ended up sending me to Finland, and I said to Linda, well, she's not going to. She's got a career. She's got group, and she was holding out. I was holding out. Finally, at the end of the day, they said, well, what's going to happen? And I said to Linda, I love you, honey, but I can't turn down a trip to Europe. They're going to send us to England and Germany and Finland. So here I go off, Ed, right, with my dear fiancée left at home, and they show pictures of us on the dating game later with me and Peggy Klinger in a sled, going through the snow. It's like we're lovebirds. So you can imagine that didn't set too well with my dear wife-to-be, but I went, and that's history now.
Well, to give a little context, folks, I mean, back then, and to some degree, we don't do as many we don't have as many game shows produced today as we did back in the 60s and 70s. But right. A lot of times, particularly a show like the dating games, if you're a young actor or a young recording artist on the rise, it would not be uncommon for your agent to get you booked on a show like the dating game, especially because the dating game was not only on in the afternoon, it was on in prime time, right. Where you had more people watching. And so the thinking was, okay, Peter, you do the dating game not so much because you want to win, but because 40 million people are going to be watching, and that's a lot of eyeballs, and maybe you'll get some work out of it.
Yeah, show me the money, remember?
Exactly.
Show me Junior from... Anyway, so I went, and I just, nothing happened. I was madly in love with my wife, but she was none too pleased though of me taking off and going. So anyway, that was that's just part of my life's experience.
It is part of the tapestry of the life of our guest Peter Ford. Peter Ford, author of Glenn Ford: A Life in a very fine, skilled raconteur in his own right.
Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call Karen Strain at 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
One more item. If you're starting a company, particularly one that is in an emerging market, you know that averting any sort of legal dispute is crucial to your business plan. Our friends at Tectonic Law offer an array of services that can help you avoid and preempt future litigation while also developing and protecting your intellectual property and intangible assets. Tectonic Law serves the needs of a host of emerging industries throughout California and beyond, including industrial designers, beverage makers, artists, farmers, retail stores, health practitioners, wellness experts, cosmetics manufacturers, nonprofit organizations, innovators in sustainable practices, and libraries. Go to tectoniclaw.com to learn more about how Tectonic Law can help your business thrive. tectoniclaw.com. Rock solid representation for groundbreaking industries. Entertainment legend Ruta Lee celebrates her 90th birthday and her long career in show business with an evening of song and stories at the historic El Portal Theater in North Hollywood Friday, May 30th, beginning at 8 p.m. Tickets are moving fast, however. Get your seat now at ovationtix.com/Ruta Lee or elportaltheater.org.
This is Irene Sue, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
JJ, let me take a look at that boot, will you?
Here, you won't get no further than I did.
Well, maybe not. It's like getting a medical opinion from a second doctor. Now look at that.
Chief Deputy Jackson.
Glenn Ford, A Life, available wherever books are sold, as well as Amazon.com. You can follow Peter, peterford.com. Peter will be back next week for part 2 of our conversation. He'll share a few more stories about his adventures in network television, including the time he nearly got decapitated while filming an episode of Barnaby Jones. Obviously, Peter lives to talk about that. He'll share that story with you. We'll be playing part 2 of our conversation with Peter Ford next week on TV Confidential.